Tabari and Ishak. While the polytheists supervised the Hajj pilgrimage, the prophet sent out his expedition to Syria. It met with disaster.
This was the first Islamic raid on Christians, and it did not go well.
They equipped themselves and set out with 3,000 men. As they bade farewell, the commanders of Allah's apostles saluted him.
However, one of them was crying.
"What is making you weep?" someone asked. He said, "I heard the prophet recite a verse from the Quran in which Allah mentioned the fires of hell. Not one of you there is that shall not go down to it. That is a thing decreed. I do not know how to get out of hell after going down there."
Muhammad had scared him into fighting. Marching off to kill and plunder Christians, the Muslim militants sang the following tune in Rajaz meter.
Tabari and Ishak. I ask the Merciful One for a pardon and for a sword that cuts wide and deep, creating a wound that shoots out foaming blood. I asked for a deadly thrust by a thirsty lance held by a zealous warrior that pierces right through the guts and liver, slitting the bowels. People shall say when they pass by my grave, Allah guided him. Fine raider that he was, O warrior, he did well.
Oh, isn't it a lovely religion?
Tabari and Ishak. The men journeyed on and encamped at Muta in Syria. They learned that Heraclius had come with 100,000 Greeks and Byzantines, joined by 100,000 Arabs.
That's not true. But why bicker over facts now? There is much more at stake than errant reporting.
Tabari. The Muslims spent 2 nights pondering what to do.
They had already been rendered unable to think on their own.
They were in favor of writing to the prophet to inform him of the number of the enemy. Either he will reinforce us, or he will give us the command to return.
Muslims lose their ability to think wisely or independently. These men were outnumbered 60-1. They were facing a real army for the very first time. These were no longer merchants or farmers.
Tabari and Ishak. Abdallah Ra'aha encouraged the men, saying, By Allah, what you loathe is the very thing you came out to seek, martyrdom. We are not fighting the enemy with number, strength, or multitude, but we are fighting them with this religion which Allah has honored us. So come on, both prospects are fine, victory or martyrdom. So they went forward.
These men had been sent out as jihadists on a holy war by none other than Islam's lone prophet. Their motivation was to die martyrs and thus gain entry into Allah's whorehouse. Thus, fundamental Islam is no different than the Islam that motivated the 9/11 suicide bombings. Like the victims of every other Islamic terrorist raids, the Byzantines had done nothing to the Muslims. But unlike so many others, these men were prepared.
Tabari. When I heard a verse being recited, I wept. Someone tapped me with a whip and said, What's wrong, little fellow? Allah is going to reward me with martyrdom, and I am going back between the horns of a camel saddle. Tabari and Ishak. The men journeyed on and were met by Heraclius's armies of Romans and Arabs. When the enemy drew near, the Muslims withdrew to Muta, and the 2 sides encountered one another. Zayed fought with the war banner of the messenger until he perished among the enemy's javelins. Jafar took it next, but could not extricate himself from difficulties. He fought until he was killed. Abdallah took up the banner, urging his soul to obey. He hesitated and then said, Soul, why do you spurn paradise? He took up his sword, advanced, and was killed. Then Thabit took the banner. He said, O Muslims, agree on a man from among yourselves. They said, You. I said, No. So they gave it to Khalid. He deflected the enemy in retreat and escaped.
When the defeated militants returned, Mohammed had no compassion for the families of his fallen comrades.
Ishak. The women began to cry after learning about Jafar's death. Disturbed, Muhammad told Abd Rahman to silence them. When they wouldn't stop wailing, Allah's apostle said, "Go and tell them to be quiet, and if they refuse, throw dust in their mouths."
Trying to make hell look like paradise and stifle the whining, we read this in Tabari, Volume 8, page 158.
The prophet ascended his pulpit and said, "A gate to good fortune, I bring you news of your campaigning army. They have set out and have met the
Christian
enemy. Zayed has died a martyr's death. He prayed for his forgiveness. He said, Jafar has died a martyr's death, and prayed for his forgiveness."
And so on down the list. My question is, if Muhammad wanted to fool them with martyrdom earns paradise, why did he ask forgiveness for the men who had died as martyrs? It just weakened his case. Then, in typical Islamic fashion, the head cleric who had ordered men to martyrdom, while he remained home in the arms of his consorts, tried once again to quell an angry city.
Tabari. The people began to throw dust at the army, saying, "You retreating runaways, you fled in the cause of Allah." But the messengers said, "They are not fleers. Allah willing, they are the ones who will return to fight another day."
A poem recited on this occasion reads,
Ichak. While the eyes of others shed tears in the night of sorrows, I wasn't sobbing. I felt the shepherd of Ursa and Pisces,
making Mohammed an occult prophet,
between my ribs and bowels, piercing me with pain, afflicting me. Allah bless the martyrs lying dead at Muta. Refresh their bones, for they fought for Allah's sake like good Muslims, stallions clad in mail. Their ranks were trapped, and now they lie prostrate. The moon lost its radiance at their death. The sun was eclipsed and became dark. We are a people protected by Allah, to whom He has revealed His book, excelling in glory and honor. Our enlightened minds cover up the ignorance of others. They would not embark on such a vicious enterprise, but Allah is pleased with our guidance and the victorious good fortune of our apostolic prophet.
Good and bad have been inverted once again.